to have any reference in the implementation plan to this action plan, to implementation bill. That is a serious, serious flaw. For that reason, I am very much opposed to this agreement.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized, and the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 30 minutes remaining.
We're on time, Mr. Camp, I think.
Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of H.R. 3078 is postponed.
Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 425, I call up the bill H.R. 3079, the United States-Panama Trade Promotion Agreement Implementation Act, and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 157, H.R. 3079, a bill to implement the United States-Panama Trade Promotion Agreement.
Pursuant to House Resolution 425, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 90 minutes, with 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, and 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Objection.
And, Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman from Michigan is recognized.
Madam Speaker, I urge rapid passage of this legislation to implement the U.S.-Panama Trade Promotion Agreement. This agreement enjoys broad bipartisan support, and it's clear why. It levels the trade playing field between the U.S. and Panama. It is good for U.S. companies, workers, and farmers, and it advances our national security and leadership in the Western Hemisphere. Right now, Panama enjoys almost total duty-free access to the United States market because it is the beneficiary of various trade preference programs. Given the importance of a stable and prosperous Panama, giving Panama this market access is warranted. However, U.S. industrial and consumer products going to Panama face an average duty of 7%, and U.S. agricultural exports face an average tariff of 15%. Implementing this agreement will level the playing field for U.S. exporters by drastically reducing or ending Panama's tariff on U.S. goods. Most U.S. consumer and industrial products will immediately become duty-free, as will half of U.S. farm exports. Any remaining tariffs will decrease quickly thereafter. Opening Panama's market will be a boon for U.S. companies, workers, and farmers. The Panamanian economy is rapidly growing and is expected to more than double by 2020. Panama is already one of the largest markets for some U.S. exporters and service firms. The importance of Panama will only grow for these firms and others as we gain greater access to this expanding economy. This is also true for our farmers, whose exports to Panama are expected to significantly increase under the agreement. Not only will American farmers benefit from lower tariffs into Panama, they will also benefit from the removal of non-tariff and regulatory barriers that discriminate against U.S. agricultural products. Best of all, the agreement will create new jobs and greater prosperity in the United States without adding to the deficit. Finally, the benefits of the U.S.-Panama Trade Promotion Agreement are not only economic. The agreement is critical to fostering our commitment to Latin America, enhancing our leadership in the Western Hemisphere, and reaffirming our relationship with a close friend. Panama is obviously a vital ally in terms of port and maritime security. It is also an important partner in combating drug trafficking and terrorism. Of course, there is also the Panama's crown jewel, the canal. The United States is the largest user of the canal, and canal security is paramount to our national security and broadly to open sea routes. Panama's cooperation in maintaining the security of the canal has been vital to our security in the region. Madam Speaker, for all of these reasons, the time to wait is past. We urgently need to pass this important job-creating legislation and move forward on an aggressive trade agenda once again. I urge all of my colleagues to support this bipartisan legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Thank you. I yield myself 1 minute. As I said, as to Colombia, each of these agreements should be taken on their own. The Panama FTA, as originally negotiated by the Bush administration, failed to address serious concerns about Panama's labor laws and status as a tax haven. It has been changed through the efforts of congressional Democrats and the Obama administration, and it now deserves our support. Fully enforceable labor and environment standards are included in the core of this agreement. Panama has brought its laws into full compliance with ILO standards. And late last year, Panama signed a tax exchange information agreement, and they have changed their laws to implement this agreement. Republicans negotiated a flawed agreement. It has been fixed. It now deserves its support. I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I yield to myself such time as I may consume. May I proceed?
The gentleman's recognized.
I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 3079, the United States-Panama Trade Implementation Act. With our nation's unemployment continuing to hover around 9%, it is unconscionable that we're considering a NAFTA clone free trade agreement. This agreement would further facilitate the outsourcing of American jobs and undermine the rights of American workers. Proponents of free trade agreements like to purport that they're good for the American economy and will create jobs. But history is on the side of those of us who opposed NAFTA, CAFTA, and other damaging trade agreements over the last decade. Free trade agreements play a significant role in exacerbating the negative effects of globalization, including the rapid privatization of vital public resources. They've resulted in the loss of domestic jobs and manufacturing industries and in significant decreases to labor and environmental standards. In addition, free trade agreements result in significant job loss and privatization of labor-intensive industries for countries we enter into the trade agreements with. Unionizing in countries like Mexico and Colombia has resulted in death or imprisonment of union leaders. Every state in this country has been affected negatively by our destructive trade policies. The Economic Policy Institute estimates that nearly 700,000 U.S. jobs have been displaced since the passage of NAFTA in the 1990s. The majority of the jobs displaced, 60%, were in the manufacturing sector. My home state of Ohio is one of the top 10 states with the most jobs displaced by NAFTA, having lost 34,900 jobs. Our rapidly increasing trade deficits with countries like China has resulted in the loss of over 5 million jobs in the last decade. Of that 5 million, the state of Ohio has lost 103,000 jobs as a result of the increase in our trade deficit with China. This is not a debate about being for trade or against trade, as some of my colleagues have framed it. This is a debate about learning from the free trade policies we pursued over the last decade that have proven to be significantly damaging to the American economy and American workers. The numbers speak for themselves. I urge my colleagues to oppose this agreement. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Ohio reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise strongly in support of this bipartisan legislation to create jobs in America and to strengthen our relationship with a strong, long-standing ally in our hemisphere, Panama. Why wouldn't we sign this sales agreement? Panama is a growing market, almost a 9% growth in their economy, in a major way in our backyard. They are our economy that matches up beautifully with America. Most of its services, most of its economy is services sector like the United States, and it provides brand new markets, new customers, not just for manufacturing, not just for agriculture, as important as they are, but our services sector, which is critical to so many communities across this country. It's time to act now because we're falling behind. While America's been off the trade agenda, other countries have moved forward very aggressively, and in Panama, recognizing its strategic importance and its economic growth, has signed similar sales agreements with Taiwan and Singapore, and with Europe and Canada, and many more in the line. So every day we wait, American manufacturers, American farmers, American technology companies lose out. And finally, Panama has done so much to tackle issues labor rights. Their strong commitment to labor rights, having recently passed under President Martinelli almost a dozen laws strengthening labor rights in Panama. And to address the issue of tax avoidance and tax havens, Panama has signed many agreements, including with the United States, to be transparent to the point where they are now recognized internationally as being as committed to open tax treaties and tax treatment as the United States is today. Mr. Speaker, there's no reason to wait. Implementing the Panama Agreement will benefit our economy. It will benefit the Panamanian economy, strengthen this crucial ally, and keep America from falling further behind. I yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Madam Speaker, since I came to Congress, I've worked together with Congresswoman Kaptur in challenging these unfair trade agreements. I am proud to yield 4 minutes to the gentlelady from Ohio for her presentation.
The gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized for 4 minutes.
I want to thank my good friend from Ohio for yielding me the time and for his steadfast opposition to these free trade agreements. And I rise in strong opposition to this proposed Panama Free Trade Agreement. Who in their right mind could believe any free trade agreements modeled on NAFTA would create jobs in our country? I remember during the 1990s fighting the first NAFTA accord here, and Newt Gingrich saying at that time NAFTA would help the United States, and I quote, by increasing American jobs through world sales. Sure. Here's what NAFTA yielded. $1 trillion in accumulated trade deficit and hundreds of thousands of lost American jobs that moved from Cleveland and moved from Avon Lake and moved from Sandusky and moved from Toledo and moved from Elyria to other places in this world south of the border. Why don't we go back and fix this? Now, let's be honest. Panama's entire GDP equals about 6% of the economy of the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area. So what could this Panama Agreement actually be about? Well, letters we've received give us some insight into what it might be about. With Panama, we know that the country has a long-standing money laundering problem and that it is a tax haven for corporations. How convenient. In 2008, the Government Accountability Office included Panama on its 50-country tax haven list. Get the picture? Starting to clear some of the fog? We all know about some of these Cayman Island accounts. Well, why don't we add Panama right to the stack? Panama was long on the OECD's gray list of countries that failed to implement internationally agreed upon tax standards. Ooh, these guys have got something really good going. But you know what? In this country, it would be illegal. According to Public Citizen, approximately 400,000 firms and numerous wealthy individuals use Panama's offshore financial services industry to dodge paying their taxes. I thought we were supposed to be for returning those tax dollars to the United States, not giving them another escape hatch. AFSCME has said that Panama has a history of failing to protect workers and enforce labor rights. And the Sierra Club points out that the Panama Free Trade Agreement has the same investment chapters proposed in other trade agreements that allow foreign investors and corporations to directly challenge public interest laws for compensation before international tribunals, bypassing domestic courts. In other words, the rule of law gets shredded piece by piece by piece. Why does America keep shooting itself in the foot? As the building and construction trades at the AFL-CIO have noted, the Panama proposed agreement, like all others, and I quote, undermine the Buy America policies that reinvested our taxes in our communities. You know, it's really sad when an institution and an administration keeps doing the same thing over and over and over again that is hollowing out the jobs in the United States of America. We want to make it in America. We don't want to outsource more jobs, provide more tax havens, provide more escape hatches. When you campaign and you try to represent the people of places like Ohio, as Congressman Kucinich knows, we try so very hard. Every time you create 100 jobs, they snatch away 300. And then they say to the workers, you know what? You're earning too much money. $14 an hour, you're going down to $9. You don't like that? Well, there's the door, because there's 7,000 workers lined up for part-time jobs in places like northern Ohio. This Congress better wake up and renegotiate these trade deals that have cost the middle class across this country their ability to earn a living in America. I thank the gentleman for yielding me the time and look forward to the continuing debate.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Kinzinger.
The gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the chairman for yielding. America is talking so much now, and there's such a need right now for jobs. There is such a need. You have 9%, over 9% of this country that is begging every day for the opportunity to go out and work and earn a living. We have a middle class that's feeling the squeeze because we feel disappearing manufacturing. And that's something I'm very concerned about. In my district in Illinois, we have a very heavy manufacturing base. And when you look at that heavy manufacturing base and the fact that they produce a lot of goods that need to be exported, you have to find a consumer base in order to sell it. And 95% of the world's consumers live outside of our country. It would only make sense to create an environment where we can take our goods and in a fair way export them to other countries. Panama, an ally of the United States, currently has a situation where they can charge tariffs on our imports and we don't charge tariffs on imports from them. This agreement would bring that to a level playing field and allow the people in my district who literally sweat every day, wondering if they're going to have a paycheck tomorrow, the opportunity to enhance their exports, to enhance those American goods, that made in America. But it's great for somebody in another country to read the product that they buy that also says made in America too. We have a heavy agricultural district in my area too, and when I look at the farmers and their opportunity to sell their goods, the good products that we create every day overseas, that's very important. As you know, in business, the ability to be successful means you have to be on the cutting edge and constantly finding markets and places to sell your goods at. This does that for us. I think it's sad that it's taken us this many years to get to this point, and I think we've lost a lot of opportunity cost in the process. But I'm pleased that today we are finally taking up these 3 agreements. I'm pleased that we're taking up this trade agreement with Panama, and that we have an opportunity to really strengthen a band with a strong ally of the United States, strengthen our exports, and I'm excited that the tens of thousands of people that rely on trade in my district will have an opportunity to sell more goods. And I yield back.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
I now yield 4 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Washington, the ranking on our Trade Subcommittee.
The gentleman from Washington is recognized for 4 minutes.
Madam Speaker, I agree with the last gentleman. We ought to be talking about the jobs bill. The President put a bill out here. We can't get the Republican leadership to even bring it up. But we will bring up the Panama Free Trade Agreement. Now, this is a break from trade policies in the past. It reflects hard work of many of us to change U.S. trade policy. There are 5 reasons to support this agreement. First, it has strong, enforceable labor and environmental obligations. Many of us fought for years to get these commitments into our trade agreements. We lost those battles in '95. I was here when NAFTA passed, and the debate in CAFTA 6 years later, which is why in that agreement, 15 Democrats voted for it, because it wouldn't take care of workers. Now, that all changed in 2007 when the Democrats took over the House. The last administration finally accepted our demands on labor, the environment, and other issues such as access to medicine. This agreement includes all of those. We, secondly, have used the leverage of this agreement to eliminate a tax haven. No one denies that Panama was a great tax haven, but they have ratified the tax information agreement with us, which the Wall Street Journal says, quote, is the most significant step to date on the road to ending 4 decades of virtually watertight banking secrecy laws in Panama. Third, we worked with Panama to bring its labor rights up to standard. Fourth, the investment provisions of this agreement do more to protect the government's rights to regulate those found in past agreements, such as Chapter 11 of NAFTA. For example, this agreement clarifies that the environmental regulations generally are not expropriations and that foreign investors do not have greater rights than U.S. investors under U.S. law. Finally, the United States has consistently maintained a trade surplus with Panama for over 20 years, and this agreement is expected to increase. I support the agreement. Panama has done what we've asked, and they should enjoy the benefits of a free trade agreement. But make no mistake, we need to do more than improve our U.S. trade policy. We have to get the Republican leadership in the House and Senate to admit that we're going to have a jobs bill. We've been in session for 300 days after an election which all we heard was the Democrats didn't get jobs, jobs, jobs. And now, 300 days, silence. Silence on the Republican side. Not one single bill. When is it coming, folks? That ought to be the next bill that comes up to the floor. I urge my colleagues to vote for this.
The gentleman yields back. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This time I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Ros-Lehtinen.
The gentlewoman from Florida is recognized.
I thank the Speaker and I thank the esteemed Chairman for the time. And Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the U.S.-Panama Free Trade Agreement. Panama is already in my home district, Miami-Dade's top 25 trading partners, and Florida as a whole, it ranks #1 among all of the states in exports to that country. Incredible numbers. And these figures, Madam Speaker, will only increase once the FTA has been approved and American businesses no longer face heavy tariffs and other artificial barriers to trade. But in addition to the potential economic growth stemming from this agreement, Panama is a key strategic ally in the region. Ever since the Panama Canal was completed a century ago, Panama's importance to the U.S. has only increased as a major transportation route, with 2/3 of its traffic consisting of shipments between our west and east coasts. For these reasons, expanded exports, increased jobs, closer ties with a strategic ally, I hope that colleagues on both sides of the aisle will pass this free trade agreement. Madam Speaker, we have been waiting for this agreement for far too long. Years of lost opportunities, but now we have a chance to repair that damage. In the past year alone, Panama's economy grew 6.2%, making it one of the fastest growing in Latin America and an expanding opportunity for American businesses. Currently, U.S. industrial exports face an average tariff of 7%, but some tariffs go as high as over 80%. But once this agreement goes into effect, 87% of all U.S. goods exported to Panama will become duty-free immediately. In the past 4 years since the trade agreement was signed, American companies have paid millions upon millions of dollars in tariffs to the Panamanian government. These dollars are needlessly spent by U.S. Businesses to foreign governments when they could have been paid here in the United States to beef up our businesses. So I thank the Speaker for the time. I thank the esteemed Chairman for the time also.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Perhaps you could tell us how much time there is for each of us. Let's see if we can make sure we're in sync here.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 26 minutes remaining. The gentleman from Ohio has 23 minutes remaining. And the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 21 minutes remaining.
I now yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman, the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Cuellar.
The gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you very much for yielding. By leveling the playing field with the 21st century trade deals with Panama, Colombia, South Korea, we will increase American export abroad and spur domestic job creation. Now more than ever, the U.S. needs trade to fuel growth, create jobs, preserve Americans' position as the leader of the greater economy. I represent a border region of Texas where trade is part of the daily life. I understand the importance of trade to my hometown's value in supporting the local economy. As the chairman of the Pro-Trade Caucus and represent a trade-centric district, I support all 3 pending trade agreements. Today, trade supports over 50 million American jobs, according to the U.S. Department of Treasury. These pending FTAs will create an additional 250,000 new jobs in industries like manufacturing, agriculture, and service sectors, according to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Last week, the Wall Street Journal reported the FTA would boost U.S. exports by $13 billion annually. To grow, we must be an export powerhouse. The U.S.-Panama FTA will remove barriers to American goods entering into Panama. According to the U.S. Trade Representative, over 87% of the U.S. exports of consumer industrial products to Panama will become duty-free immediately and with the remaining tariffs spaced over the following 10 years. The U.S. International Trade Commission estimates passage of the U.S.-Korea Free Trade Agreement would increase U.S. exports by over $10 billion and create 70,000 American jobs. According to the National Association of Manufacturers, the exports to Korea would grow by more than 1/3. The U.S.-Colombia FTA would expand exports by more than $1.1 billion with the tariff reductions, according to the International Trade Commission. Without the U.S.-Colombia FTA, the U.S. cotton exporters to Colombia will have unnecessarily paid over $14 million in tariffs. Lawmakers have a choice. Pass the deals or allow America to lose the opportunity to emerge in the constantly growing global market. Pass the deals or miss the chance to create 250,000 American jobs. Pass the deals or allow American businesses to sit on the sidelines while foreign countries forge ahead. America must pass the Colombia, Korea, and Panama trade deals, or we will fall behind. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from New York, who's made a real impact in this Congress in her first year. Representative Hochul.
The gentlewoman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank my colleague from Ohio. I'm here to stand up on behalf of the working men and women of the 26th District of New York. People like the woman at the Buffalo airport this morning who served me my energy drink as I boarded the flight. She said to me she worked at the airport because she had lost her job of 23 years at a textile factory in downtown Buffalo. First the jobs went south, then they went overseas. Jobs gone forever. As I left for my flight, she said to me, keep fighting for our jobs, don't forget us. Well, I won't forget her. If I thought any of these fair trade agreements would help that woman and help others in my district, I'd be all in favor. But in Western New York, we know better. We were promised prosperity with earlier trade agreements. But while the companies became more prosperous,
the jobs were sucked away from our community to foreign shores, lost forever. As they say in the immortal song made famous by The Who, we don't get fooled again. I encourage my opponents, my colleagues to oppose these agreements, and I yield back the balance of my time. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I reserve.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, recognized.
Thank you. I now yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Wisconsin, Ms. Baldwin.
The gentlewoman from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in opposition to this trade agreement with Panama and to the 2 others that we are considering this week with South Korea and Colombia. Trade agreements should be in the best interests of our nation and its people, but sadly this has not been the case with the past free trade agreements. Have some of our wealthiest corporations profited from them? Indeed. But the rest of America, especially the middle class, has struggled with job loss, closed factories, and economic and emotional anguish across the country. I hear from Wisconsin families every day that are struggling mightily, struggling to pay the mortgage, put food on the table, and send their kids to college. Especially during these uncertain economic times, the solution is to put our people back to work and preserve American jobs. When done right, trade agreements can help bolster our manufacturing and high-skilled technology industries and create jobs as they increase exports and help our economy recover. Done wrong, trade agreements send these same jobs offshore, leaving Americans out of work. Unfortunately, I believe these trade agreements with South Korea, Panama, and Colombia will exacerbate the U.S. trade deficit and further erode our manufacturing base.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
I'll reserve.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. Gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield myself 1 minute.
Gentleman's recognized.
The U.S.-Panama Free Trade Agreement requires the U.S. to waive Buy America requirements for all Panamanian incorporated firms and even many Chinese and other foreign firms incorporated in Panama that are there to exploit the tax system. This means that work that should go to U.S. workers can be offshored because of the rules which forbid Buy America preferences requiring U.S. employees to perform contract work by a federal agency in the federal procurement process. According to Global Trade Watch, the U.S. would be waiving Buy America requirements for trillions in U.S. government contracts for any corporations established in Panama, and in exchange would get almost no new procurement contract opportunities in Panama for U.S. companies. This trade deal is in the NAFTA tradition of weakening offshore protections, limiting financial resource service regulations, banning Buy America procurement preferences, limiting environmental, food, and product safety safeguards, and undermining U.S. workers and our economy. We have to defeat this. We have to be able to buy America, or it's bye-bye America.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan continues to reserve. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Let me ask Mr. Camp,
I have 1 minute remaining with one additional speaker.
And one additional speaker?
No, 1 minute with one speaker.
Okay, shall we follow the order I think we set? You want to do that? I'll use my remaining time and Mr. Kucinich will finish.
All right. Then, Madam Speaker, then I yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Bilbray.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, this is not offshore. This proposal is next door. These are our neighbors. Second of all, this is not just about great opportunities economically for America, but we hear people talk about the environment. When you recycle, so-called replace your cell phones, where do you think they go? They get rebuilt and they get shipped down to our neighbors to the south so they can have the economic opportunities. They can have the learning opportunities. This is the kind of cooperation we want to see in our hemisphere. But to attack Panama which is the leader of showing how they can stimulate an economy with almost 10% growth, to attack Panama, allowing the working class access to recycled material, environmentally friendly but economically uplifting, to attack that kind of agreement on this floor, and then say that you're for the environment and you're for helping the poor. Don't come to this floor and say you care about the environment, you care about the needy, and you care about our neighbors, and oppose this proposal. And I yield back.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
Could I request how much time I have remaining?
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, has 22½ minutes remaining.
So I will now I yield myself 2½ minutes.
The gentleman from Michigan yields himself 2½ minutes. He's recognized.
I voted against NAFTA. I led on this floor the battle against CAFTA. I did so because in those agreements there were not enforceable international worker rights. We face this in Panama. As originally negotiated, there was not the implementation of those rights in Panama. They had certain provisions relating to newer businesses. They also had restrictions in terms of trade zones. And what we said to the Panamanians was, bring your laws up to international standards. That's exactly what they did. This is the opposite in that respect of NAFTA and CAFTA. So it is not accurate to say this is a NAFTA-type agreement. It simply is not. In terms of government procurement, we want access for our companies and workers to the construction that's going on in the Panama Canal Zone. It's vital for our companies. And so essentially in this agreement, there is a provision that we can have access there with limits as they can with limits to us. It's mutually beneficial. Lastly, there's been reference to the tax haven. Panama was a tax haven, one of the most striking in the world, and we insisted that they enact a TIA. They've done exactly that. So if we take these one at a time, this is an agreement that meets our standards, that changes the agreement from the way it was negotiated by the Bush administration. We should support this agreement. I yield back.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, yields back. The gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich, is recognized.
I yield myself 1 minute. Panama is one of the world's worst tax havens, allowing rich U.S. individuals and corporations to skirt their responsibility to pay taxes that are vital to the local communities that depend on these revenues. This agreement does nothing to address this issue. At a time when austerity measures are being proposed to balance the budget, we should not be considering a free trade agreement that fails to deal with an issue critical to addressing our deficit. This free trade agreement includes provisions that undermine our own laws to combat tax haven activity. Public Citizens Global Trade Watch reports that the FTA services, financial services, and investment chapters include provisions that forbid limits on transfers of money between the U.S. and Panama, yet such limits are the strongest tools that the U.S. has to enforce policies aimed at stopping international tax avoidance. The agreement fails to hold Panama and corporations accountable for tax evasion. The agreement only requires Panama to stop refusing to provide information to U.S. officials in specific cases if U.S. officials know to inquire who's telling. There's a significant exception that allows Panama to reject requests for information if it's contrary to the national interest. Do not reward corporations who offshore jobs
expired.
and practice international tax avoidance. Do not hurt American workers and the economy. Defeat this trade agreement.
The gentleman's time has expired.
Thank you.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Pursuant to Clause 1C of Rule 19, further consideration of H.R. 3079 is postponed. For what purpose does the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, rise?
Madam Speaker, pursuant to House Resolution 425, I call up the bill H.R. 3080, the United States-Korea Free Trade Agreement Implementation Act, and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the title of the bill.
Union Calendar Number 158, H.R. 3080, a bill to implement the United States-Korea Free Trade Agreement.
Pursuant to House Resolution 425, the bill is considered read. The bill shall be debatable for 90 minutes, with 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, and 30 minutes controlled by the gentleman from Maine, Mr. Michaud. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I ask unanimous consent that members have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
The U.S.-Korea agreement is the most commercially significant trade agreement considered by the Congress in 17 years, and it couldn't come at a better time. With the unemployment rate stuck stubbornly above 9%, we must seek out and take advantage of all opportunities to create American jobs. This agreement, known as KORUS, will do just that by supporting hundreds of thousands of good-paying jobs in all sectors. Last year, I worked closely with the administration, the major automakers, auto workers, and Mr. Levin to address persistent barriers to U.S. automobile trade with South Korea. The supplemental agreement, which is incorporated in the legislation before us today, addresses key tariff and non-tariff barriers and includes numerous provisions to ensure that South Korea can no longer use its regulatory system to block U.S. exports. The International Trade Commission estimates that removal of non-tariff barriers will add an additional $48 to $66 million in new exports. This, in addition to the $194 million in expected new exports from lower Korean tariffs on U.S. autos. Inaction on KORUS has allowed the EU and other competitors to step in and steal U.S. market share and has diminished U.S. leadership in Asia. KORUS is the key to our engagement in Asia and a critical bulwark to Chinese influence in the region. I call on the President to promptly enter this agreement into force so that our workers, companies, farmers, and ranchers can get off the sidelines and recapture market share. KORUS and the other 2 agreements we will pass this week will create sustainable and well-paying jobs. Passage of KORUS will also deepen ties with a strong and important ally. The United States and South Korea have stood shoulder to shoulder for more than 60 years. KORUS is the next step forward in our bilateral relationship, and today's action could not come soon enough. I look forward to welcoming President Lee during his state visit tomorrow and to congratulating him personally on passage of this important agreement, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized.
It's now my distinct pleasure to yield 4 minutes to our whip, Mr. Hoyer from Maryland.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 4 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I rise in support of the 3 trade agreements that are pending before us and in support of the trade adjustment assistance for working men and women in this country. There is no doubt, as so many of my colleagues have observed, that globalization of the marketplace and the growth of competitors around the world has put a real stress on America and on American workers. As one of those who has fought very hard to have this floor consider legislation to facilitate making it in America, making sure that American workers are making American goods and selling them here and around the world, it seems to me that in that process what we need to do is to bring down barriers to exports around the world. I perceive these 3 agreements accomplishing that objective.
I want to congratulate my dear friend, Sandy Levin, as well as the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, from Mr. Camp, for working hard on all of these agreements. I particularly want to congratulate Mr. Levin, who has given such careful consideration and care to the development of agreements that he feels he can support. He is supporting Korea and Panama, as am I. He has concluded that the protections in Colombia are not yet sufficient to protect workers that we all want to protect. I share his concern there. I have transmitted that to the administration, as has Mr. Levin. I would like to read a portion of the submittal correspondence from the President of the United States referencing Colombia. The agreement contains state-of-the-art provisions to help protect and enforce intellectual property rights, reduce regulatory red tape, and eliminate regulatory barriers to U.S. exports. The agreement also contains the highest standard for protecting labor rights, carrying out covered environmental agreements, and ensuring that key domestic labor and environmental laws are enforced, combined with strong remedies for noncompliance. Colombia has already made significant reforms related to the obligations it will have under the labor chapter. A number of these steps have been taken in fulfillment of the commitments Colombia made in the agreed action plan. I want to again say that Mr. Levin has visited Colombia, spent time there, and overseen the action plan and its implementation. But then the important sentence for me, and I hope for others, is Colombia must successfully implement key elements of the action plan before I will bring the agreement into force. There is a bipartisan consensus, Madam Speaker, in favor of reducing trade barriers. Those who support expanded trade do so because we believe American companies can compete globally and export more of what our workers make right here in America. At the same time, through trade agreements bring changes, which may cause and do cause some workers to lose their jobs. That is why President Kennedy in 1962 introduced the Trade Adjustment Assistance Program to mitigate the negative effects of changes in trade policy. Under this program, the government provides job retraining, relocation, allowances, and income assistance for those whose jobs are affected by international trade. For companies that lose business, the federal government lends a hand with guidance and financial assistance to help develop recovery plans. President Kennedy called it, and I quote, a program to afford time for American initiative, American adaptability, and American resilience to assert themselves. I believe these agreements give us that continuing opportunity. But we must protect our workers in the process. As we engage in measures designed to strengthen exports, at the same time, Congress must continue. Mr. Camp, may I have a minute?
The gentleman's time has expired.
How much time do I have?
The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, has 28 minutes.
Yes, the gentleman is recognized. I yield the gentleman a minute.
I thank my friend.
The gentleman has an additional 1 minute.
I thank my friend for yielding 1 minute. As we engage in measures designed to strengthen exports, at the same time, Congress must continue to provide assistance to those whose jobs may be lost in the process. We need to do whatever we can to help get our people back to work and safeguard American jobs. I urge a vote in favor of the Trade Adjustment Assistance. That will be the last item we will consider. And I indicate my support of all three of the agreements. In May of '07, we made some definite progress with Mr. Levin's leadership and the leadership in a bipartisan way of saying workers' rights were going to be recognized in these agreements. In my view, that is the case in these three agreements. Are they perfect? I think no agreement is ever perfect. But do they move us in a position where the United States will be better able to make it in America and sell it abroad? I think they do. And therefore, I will support these agreements. I thank the gentleman for yielding me the additional minute and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Michaud, Maine, is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Kucinich.
The gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. This agreement is based on the NAFTA-style trade model that has displaced and cut hundreds of thousands of jobs in the U.S. over the last decade. According to the Economic Policy Institute, this agreement is expected to increase our trade deficit with Korea by $16.7 billion and in turn cost the U.S. 159,000 jobs within the first 7 years of its implementation alone. Global Trade Watch states that it is expected to increase our trade deficit in autos and auto parts by $700 million, further devastating a domestic industry that's been in decline. I'm tired of visiting places where there's grass growing in parking lots in this country where they used to make steel, they used to make automotive products. It's time that we drew the line on behalf of American jobs and American workers and defeat this trade agreement. Reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr.
Thank you,
Chairman.
Madam Speaker. At this time, I yield 2 minutes to the distinguished chairman of the Trade Subcommittee, the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Brady.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank Chairman Camp, Ranking Member Sandy Levin for working together with this President, with the Senate, with our auto companies and auto workers to improve this agreement to ensure we sell more American cars into Korea. This is why this agreement has such strong, among many other reasons, why this agreement has so much strong bipartisan support. As I've already said tonight, I'm excited to be here. This trade agreement include, as well as strengthening our security relationship with one of our strongest allies. This is the most commercially significant trade agreement the United States has signed since I've been in Congress. The delay in implementing this sales agreement has been felt across America. If our exporters can't compete because of high tariffs or non-tariff barriers, they can't grow their businesses and put Americans back to work. That's why expanding opportunities for U.S. exporters, finding new customers is so critical to our workers, so critical to putting our economy back on the right track and creating good-paying American jobs right here in the United States. For example, this agreement turns one-way trade into the United States into two-way trade. The average South Korean tariff on our exporters is more than 4 times what it is when South Korea exports to us. This agreement addresses that imbalance. The job-creating benefits of this agreement will be enjoyed broadly among manufacturers, agriculture, service, technology companies. The American Farm Bureau estimates the U.S. will export increase by more than $1.8 billion to this market. Moreover, so many, 90% of American companies selling to South Korea are small and medium-sized enterprises in our neighborhoods and in our communities, and it will lead to an additional $3 billion in exports for these small businesses. It's no longer enough to buy American, we have to sell American, and this Sell American agreement is essential if we are to get our economy back on track. I strongly support it and yield back.
His time has expired. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin, is recognized. Gentleman reserves. The gentleman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I now would like to yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Kaptur.
The gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman from Maine for yielding and rise in opposition to the proposed South Korea trade accord. Look, my friend, South Korea's market is basically closed. You can't see any other cars on the road there other than Korean cars. And American policy has allowed jobs to be whittled away here at home through a trade agenda that outsources U.S. production and American jobs. Every single year we have a trade deficit with South Korea now. Why do we want to make it worse? You know what? The American people know it. They're living it. They want us to fix it. They're pouring out into the streets of America to tell us. Last year, our trade deficit with South Korea already was over $10 billion. That translates into more lost jobs here at home. But rather than stopping this outsourcing of America, the executive branch and some of their allies up here keep concocting more of the same NAFTA-type trade agreements that increase our trade deficit and obviously even more with South Korea now. The Economic Policy Institute analysis predicts this proposed agreement with South Korea will cost us 159,000 more lost jobs net, and the International Trade Commission verifies that. Isn't it time that we put Americans back to work here inside our country rather than giving them more of the same red ink? I yield back my remaining time.
Gentlewoman's time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, I'll reserve.
Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, reserves. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Levin.
I also reserve. We have only two more. Thank you.
Reserves. The gentleman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you. I now would yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Braley.
Gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Speaker, I call on all my colleagues to oppose George Bush's job-killing trade deal with Korea. Listen to the American people. Only 18% of Americans believe that free trade has created jobs in the United States. That's from the conservative Wall Street Journal poll. The same poll says that 53% of Americans say trade deals have hurt our country. 61% of the Tea Party supporters say that free trade has hurt the United States. Facts don't lie. The simple truth is, during the last decade of so-called free trade, the United States has lost 54,000 manufacturers, over 5 million manufacturing jobs, 43,000 manufacturing jobs in my state of Iowa. That's 1,370 factory jobs lost every day at an average salary of $55,000. Wake up, America. We need to get serious about creating jobs, and passing more Bush-era job-killing trade deals is not the answer. We have a trade deficit that has created a job deficit. That's what we need to solve. And I yield back.
Time has expired. Gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Camp, is recognized.
At this time, Madam Speaker, I yield 1 minute to a distinguished member of the Ways and Means Committee, the gentleman from New York, Mr. Reed.
The gentleman from New York is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in strong support of the three pending agreements before this great body. This is a great day. This is a great day for America in the sense that we have before us an opportunity to create 250,000 jobs. That's the administration's own number. That is the number that has been verified, and I am a supporter of that number in creating jobs for Americans across this entire nation. Now, when I came here as a freshman member of Congress, there was a big question about the freshman class's thoughts about free trade. And I was proud to be part of an effort that got 67 out of 87 freshman Republican members to sign a letter to the administration to say, we support free and fair trade. Because when it's free and when it's fair, the American workers will outcompete anyone in the world. And that is exactly what these agreements will do. And in particular, with the U.S.-Korea relationship, not only will we be strengthening a strategic relationship, we will be creating hundreds of thousands of jobs. And with that, I support and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman's time has expired. The gentleman from Maine is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. At this time, I'd like to yield 3 minutes to the gentlewoman from Ohio, Ms. Sutton.
The gentlewoman from Ohio is recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for the time. Madam Speaker, I rise today in opposition to all of the raw trade deals coming to the floor tomorrow because our families cannot afford the loss of any more jobs. Based on a myth that there is some sort of world free market, they call these deals free trade agreements. But, Madam Speaker, there is nothing free about them. These NAFTA-type deals are not free to our workers who will lose their jobs because of them. They're not free for our communities when more of our factories are boarded up and more careers are packed up and shipped overseas as some of our multinational corporations with no allegiance to America search the world over for the lowest wages to be found. Common sense tells us that pittance wages paid to workers in other countries, like low wages here, will not empower people to buy our products. Enough is enough, Madam Speaker. Some of the same people here on the floor claiming these deals level the playing field for American manufacturers and jobs supported NAFTA too. And how has that worked for us? Since NAFTA was signed, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, we've seen approximately 5 million manufacturing jobs lost. Over 350,000 of those jobs from my state of Ohio. These are not free deals. They are raw deals for the American people. Make no mistake, the fact that we're seeing more trade adjustment assistance being offered for passage alongside these deals is an admission that more Americans are about to lose their jobs with these deals. At a time when so many are struggling to find a job, why would we pass a deal that we know will result in job loss? It's unconscionable that we would pass a deal with Colombia where they have allowed trade unionists and those standing for civil rights to be killed with impunity. And if we pass a deal with Korea, according to the Economic Policy Institute, we could see our trade deficit increase by another $14 billion and see another 159,000 jobs lost. This raw deal would be particularly bad for my district and districts around the country that support our domestic auto industry, auto suppliers and parts makers. Right now, Korea has the largest trade imbalance when it comes to cars, only importing 5% of cars sold, and this won't change that. In fact, it will only make it worse by allowing Korea to keep out American cars if they don't meet certain standards. Madam Speaker, enough is enough. This bad trade deal pours salt into the wound already festering within American manufacturing sector, and it will destroy opportunity for people right here in the United States. The American people don't want more bad free trade deals that aren't free. I encourage all of my colleagues to vote against this horrible, horrible package of trade deals, and I yield back my time.